So there are 7 things that could completely derail your police recruitment process, and they are not the national SIFT, they're not to do with the online assessment centre, and they're not to do with the final interview. Let's dive in and I'll explain to you what each one of these things are so you can avoid the heartache that comes when you actually make one of these mistakes. Now, the first one is tattoos. If you've got a tattoo, you need to make sure that that tattoo is actually going to be something that the force accepts. And the thing is, they don't make that judgment until the end of the process. You might need to push them a little bit if you've got a tattoo that you feel as though might be contentious, and push them a little bit to make sure that you're not going to go through a year plus worth of assessments and interviews and medical and fitness and vetting and all the rest of it just to find that your tattoo is not acceptable. And don't think just because it's covered up that it's going to be an issue. It's not going to be an issue. We've just had one of our clients come back to us. We didn't even know they had this tattoo. They had a tattoo top of the shoulder, which the forces deemed unacceptable. And that's it, end of game. And you might be thinking, well, they're not going to be policing naked, so what's that tattoo got to do with anything? Well, it just has, and it just is. And the golden rule kicks in, those who hold the gold make the rules, which means that this person is not going to go any further unless they can appeal it successfully, and we're going to help them with that as well. But if they can't appeal it successfully, that's the end of their journey. In that force, that's what I'll say, it's in that force. And why do I say that? Well, there's an authorised professional practice to do with vetting, but every force applies their own standards, and they're all different, and the standard is set by the chief constable or by someone else senior within the force. So we've got some forces where tattoos on hands are acceptable. Other forces, it's a no-no. We know of one person who's been failed because instead of a wedding ring on their finger, they had a wedding band tattooed on their finger, and that went against the rules. Like, it doesn't matter how much you try and bang the common sense drum, the rules said no tattoos on hands or fingers. They had a tattoo on their finger. That's the end of the journey. I know someone else who had same thing on a they actually had their wedding band, but they had the name of their partner tattooed underneath the wedding band. Again, failed because it broke the rules. Now, you might be thinking that the police are stuck in stupid. Well, yeah, I think they are stuck in a stupid groove sometimes, and that's just the way it is, though. It doesn't really matter whether we agree, we disagree. They're making the rules, they're making the decisions. So make sure your tattoos are something that's going to be acceptable. And I keep getting asked this question. I'm in the police recruitment process. Would I be okay getting a tattoo? Just don't. Just quite simply, don't get a tattoo until you're in the police, until you got a warrant card in your pocket. It's almost like open season then, although there's some tattoos that you just won't get because if you did get them, they'll still find a way to march you out of the job. So nothing on your face, nothing on your neck, although we've seen some police officers succeed with neck tattoos, something behind the ear, we've seen someone succeed, it depends on the force. Second thing, qualifications. Now, if the police force that you're applying to says that they want 2 GCSEs in English and maths, they want 2 GCSEs in English and maths or the equivalent. If they say they want 80 UCAS points in A-levels or equivalent, they want 80 UCAS points or equivalent in A-level. And you might be thinking, this sounds like a postcode lottery. It absolutely is. There's almost 50 police forces in the United Kingdom. Actually, there's just over 50 police forces if you count things like states of Jersey, states of Guernsey, Isle of Man Police, Belfast Ports Police. Honestly, there's over 50, and all of them have completely different educational qualifications requirements, ranging from 2 GCSEs in English and maths to the highest we've seen is 120 UCAS points, which is equivalent to 3 Bs at A-level. 3 Bs at A-level, that's insane, but it is what it is. So make sure you've got the right qualifications, because otherwise you'll get all the way to the end of the process and they'll just go, no thanks. You're out of the process. You've not got the right qualifications. And there's no point in saying, but I'm only 4 UCAS points off. Doesn't matter. You're out because you didn't reach the required standard. And the other thing about qualifications is make sure you've got your certificates, because if you get to the end of the process and then they say, great, you've got the right qualifications, can we see the certificates, please? And you say, oh, I can't find them. You're out. That's the end of it. Someone else will take your place. So you've got to have the originals as well. Photocopies are no good. So now's the time to dig them out, and if you can't find them, now's the time to apply to the Education Authority or the Qualifications Authority that gave you the qualification and apply for a duplicate. All right, number 3, references. So many of you missing the opportunity to secure a place in a particular intake because you have not chased up your references. You've not told your references that they're going to expect a letter from the police or an email from the police to say, this person's looking to apply, can you tell me something about them? And you're not warming them up for this to make sure that they actually do this on time. Because guess what? Sometimes if a letter or an email is not important to them, it goes to the bottom of the pile. You need to make sure it goes to the top of the pile. This could derail your journey, because if the intake is in 1 month's time and they've still not got the references, they will put someone else into that slot. It's just as simple as that. Number 4, fitness, medical, BMI. Fitness, you've got to reach 5.4 on the bleep test. Start working towards it now. You might be thinking, oh, that's easy, I can do that. But a lot of it is about technique. So you could be the best runner in the world. You could have run marathons, but if you fail on technique for the bleep test, you're out. Equally, if 5.4 is going to be stretching for you, then start working towards it now. You can't go from couch to 5.4 on the bleep test in the space of a week. If you need to work at it, now's the time to start working at it. Medical, check the medical conditions to make sure that you've not got something that's going to preclude you from joining the police. So many people get all the way to the end of the process, they have their medical and get told, can't join. And they'll go, yeah, but no one told me. Well, it was on the information on our website. Didn't you look? You know, they're not responsible for spoon feeding you. They're not responsible for serving everything to you on a silver platter. You've got to do something called research the requirements of the role. And so many of you are failing on that as well. Last one, BMI, body mass index. I know some of you might be thinking that's a ridiculous way of measuring whether someone is obese or not, or has too much weight. But it is what it is. If a force is using body mass index, then you can't have a body mass index of over 30 to pass their medical process. Then guess what? If you're 31, you'll fail. You might be thinking, yeah, but it's only one off. Doesn't matter. That's just the way it is. There's some forces out there that are a bit more flexible. They'll look at you and go, all right, you might be 32, but it's mostly muscle or whatever. Or they might use a different way of measuring you. But there's still forces out there that say no higher than 30. So if it's 30.1, it's too high. And that's just it. They've got to cut it off somewhere. So make sure that your BMI is within acceptable levels, and it will tell you on the requirements on the force website. They might even have sent you this information. I speak to recruiters who say, we've sent them all this information and then they just don't read it and they come back and fail because of X, Y, and Z, but we told them a year ago. So you can't blame them for not serving everything to you on a silver platter. So make sure your BMI is within limits. Again, this isn't something you can just address overnight. If you are over the weight that they expect you to be, you've got to lose it, and it's not going to happen overnight. We all know that. Number 5, vetting. Oh my goodness, vetting problems. So many of you are subject of vetting failures that could have been avoided. So many of you are subject to vetting failures for one force that would be a pass in another force. And you might be thinking, what's going on there? Surely it should be a national standard. Yes, it is. There's an authorised professional practice for it, but it's whether the appetite for risk is sufficient to let you in, or whether they can mitigate the risk through control measures. So as an example of that, one of my clients years ago, her brother had convictions for possession with intent to supply controlled drugs in the same force area that she was going to work in. And they gave her a mitigating control, which was that she couldn't work in a certain part of the force because that's where her brother lived. She had no contact with the brother. She'd not spoken to her brother for 10 years. And it was a very sensible decision. Whether to make that now, I don't know, because again, things change as public perception changes. And at this moment in time, public perception of the police is like, ooh, it's going down. It's probably hovering at the bottom. You know, trust and confidence in the police is a big issue at the moment. So especially around things like violence against women and girls, comments that are inappropriate. So things that people could have got away with years ago to do vetting, they can't get away with now. So if you've got a background that involves no convictions, no cautions, but you've been arrested for, and I'm talking about someone here, particular person, they've been arrested for a domestic related assault, and they've also been arrested for a harassment, breach of a harassment order to do with an ex-partner. There were no further action, there were never any charges, but It was a pattern of behaviour which demonstrated that, yeah, we don't want this person. Or another example, someone who was arrested for a public order situation, and they said some very choice things about what they thought of the police. They got released, no further action. I don't know why, but they will look at things like arrest statements to see what you've said to the police officer. So if you may be thinking that's really unfair, that because the authorised professional practice talks about whether I've been convicted or cautions or reprimands. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Look, it's your pattern of behaviour. They want to look at your behaviour. And this might have been 10 years ago. Doesn't matter. 15 years ago. Doesn't matter. You present a risk. So they'd much rather just not take on that risk and just say no, because there's a big queue of people behind you who haven't got that risk. So bear that in mind as well. Have a look at the authorised professional practice. You can Google it. Just Google authorised professional practice vetting, and it will bring that document up for you, because there's other things on vetting that you will fail on. Give you some examples. If you might be 35 years old and 20 years ago when you're 15, you stole some makeup from a counter in Boots. This has happened to one of our clients, and you received a juvenile caution for it, and you were failed on vetting, and you're thinking that was 20 years ago for stealing some small amount, £5 worth of makeup from Boots. It's got nothing to do with Boots, it's got nothing to do with makeup. It's the fact that you were cautioned for an offence of theft. And theft involves, one of the points to prove is dishonesty. So theft occurs when you dishonestly appropriate property belonging to another person with the intention of permanently depriving them of it. Now there's something, hey, know your definitions. I've been out of the police for 11 years and I still know my definitions. But it involves the phrase dishonesty. And so anything that is a caution for any offence that involves dishonesty, you will never get into the police. Full stop, never, ever, ever. All right? And it seems harsh, but it just is what it is. And you can see why. You've been dishonest once, well, it could be dishonest again, even though it's 20 years has elapsed. But it's just, those are the rules and have been set for a reason. And it's all about risk. Another example, drink driving. If you've got a drink drive conviction that's less than 10 years old, you're never getting into the police. If you've got a drink drive conviction that's over 10 years old, you might be considered, but I can share with you that I've never known anyone with a drink drive conviction to succeed in the vetting process. Why? Because they can consider you after 10 years, but you present a problem. How are they ever going to get insurance for you? We want to insure 1,500 police drivers, and 10 of them have got a conviction for drink driving. Well, that's going to raise the price of the insurance. So why should they do that just for you? Again, there's people behind you who don't have a conviction for drink driving. I'll take one of those, thank you very much. And you can just get pushed to one side. So there's a lot you can do to actually make sure that you clean up your vetting profile and work out, actually, I'm going to fail. There's no point of even applying to join the police, because you're just going to put yourself through a year to 18 months of all sorts of joyous moments as you pass every stage, only to find that you get failed at vetting right at the end. Number 6, almost the last thing that's going to derail you is time. Time. This takes a long time. Now, for some of you, you may not have the patience for the time. And when I talk about a long time, the longest I've ever seen someone go from application to walking through the door of the training centre on the first day was just under 3 years. Yes, just under 3 years. Now, it's not taking that long at the moment, but I am seeing some people, it's taking them like 18 months. So that's a problem. You've got to make sure that you've got some kind of backup plan to carry you through those 18 months. If you need this role in 6 months' time, well, you might be able to get it, but chances are it's probably going to take you, on average, more like 9 months to 12 months. You could get in within 6 months, but it's rare. You could get in within 18 months to 2 years. And again, that is rare-ish. It's probably going to be around 9 to 12 months, and it takes time because everything's done in a linear fashion. Last one, number 7. The thing that could derail you is competition. Just quite simply, competition. This is a competitive process depending on the force. If we just look at the Met Police, who are recruiting consistently all the time, 92% of all applicants don't get in. Only 8% do. That's a big force that's recruiting all the time that wants the numbers. only 8% succeed. Everyone else fails at SIFT, online assessment centre, final interview, vetting, fitness, medical, other reasons. Only 8% get through. It's competitive. It's even more competitive in smaller forces because they've only got small intakes. The intakes are getting a little bit smaller now because Uplift is finished, and there's a bit of a funding squeeze. There's a bit of a budget squeeze, and when budgets get squeezed, the pipeline for recruitment gets slimmed down. Some forces, it's actually stopping. So, for example, in Cheshire, we've got some clients who've just had their interview, they've succeeded, and they've been told that their online assessment centre won't be until June 2025 because the January intake is full. It's now the last day of October 2024. So you'll be watching this on the recording. That's a big jump from basically beginning of November to June. They've done their interview, and this is unusual, by the way. Most forces do online assessment centre, then interview. Cheshire have done interview first, and then they've worked out, well, the January intake is full. The next one's not going to be until the summer sometime. So your online assessment centre may be in June. And you'll find some forces doing this. They'll say, well done, you've succeeded at everything. Your joining date will probably be in several months' time. Keep watching your emails. So there's nothing certain until you're walking through the door. And what's happening here is you're going into a talent pool. The talent pool is when your marks were good enough to pass, but they weren't good enough to succeed in securing a place. So if there's only 25 places in an intake and there's 50 people who've been successful at getting through every stage, do the math. You can only take on half of them. And there's a stated case that actually comes from the Cheshire Constabulary from several years ago that says the only way you can select people is based on score. Not we want lots of women or we want lots of people from various different communities. You can't do that. It's got to be based on score. It's a stated case. It went all the way to the High Court. Cheshire fought it and the judge said, no, you're wrong. It's got to be based on the mark that is assigned either at the online assessment centre or at the interview. So everyone gets a mark. Everyone just doesn't get a broad brush pass. You all get a mark. And so it's that mark that will carry you through. So it's competitive. So it's not the final interview, the online assessment centre or SIFT that's failing you. It's the fact that your scores weren't high enough. So there you go, folks. 7 things that could derail you in your police recruitment journey based on 30 years of experience of doing this, 39 years of being in the police sector, and working with hundreds, thousands over the years of people just like you. If you'd like to find out more about how we could work together and you could have once a week contact with me, more than once a week contact with my colleagues in a very structured way, in a very detailed way, we'll work you hard, but we'll guarantee that you pass, then click the link below. You'll find a form to complete. Complete the form, tells us more about you, and then from there, we'll look to book a call. When we book that call with you, we'll work out whether you're a good fit for us and whether we're a good fit for you. We don't just take your money because you're breathing. We'll only take your money for this investment if we feel as though you're a good fit and vice versa. And if you fail, we'll give you all that money back. How about that? Hey, can we say fairer than that? Anyway, hopefully helpful for you. I don't want you to fall foul of any of these 7 things, and I shall catch up with you at the next one. Bye-bye for now.